Hello guys, Wet Hair Brand here today, and here I'm going to tell you another commentary video because that's what I do almost daily besides when we're doing reacts or the occasional build video. If you're here and you don't like commentary, what are you doing here? That is the true question. But today I'm going to be talking about a worrying killer trend that I am seeing with the DBD killers that have been being released, not only lately, but just over time. That makes me think there's a little bit more credence to a community worry that's been in the game for a while that I usually fight against. I usually fight against this community theory, but I think with the past group of killers, I do think that there's kind of some legs to stand on for that argument. So let's go ahead and talk about it. So the community theory that's been in DBD for a long time is that DBD, or rather behavior rather, they're slowly running out of ideas for what kind of killers they want to release. So, you know, back in the day when there were a lot of killers in the game, there were very, very new and interesting powers that were dynamic that were released, such as, you know, like Huntresses, like hatchets being such a unique thing that it got copied over and over. And also with like Myers' like stalking ability that got copied onto Ghostface. Like there was a lot of new powers coming out around that sweet spot time. But over time, people have started to notice that characters are very generally becoming more homogenous, that they are starting to become more samey, and they think that behavior is running out of ideas for killers. Now, formerly, I haven't really put a whole lot of stock into this idea because, especially with characters like Pinhead with the box stuff, like some of this stuff that they're coming up with is like really complicated. But something came to my attention the other day that actually I think adds a lot of credence to this idea that maybe behavior is running out of ideas for killers. And I want to take a look at specifically the Knight who just came out, as kind of the perfect example of like, hey, wait a minute, we've seen this before, and a lot at that. If you look at the past 3 characters that have been released, so that being Knight, Wesker, and Dredge, respectively, 2 of these characters are similar, right? The Knight obviously is a melee killer primarily, but can use his M2 power by putting it at the loop to try and secure a hit that would otherwise not be possible unless the character or the survivor on the other end so decides to hold W. Now, I've already told you in my other video, I think Dredge is much better at this and also has map mobility and a passive ability, so we're not going to get too much into that. But essentially, these characters do effectively the same thing. They approach a loop, put their power down, and eventually they get the hit, right? So in a sense, these characters are incredibly similar, and to the point where I think to myself, unless you like the novelty or the just the aesthetic of the Knight, I feel like if you want to do Knight things but more fun, just play Dredge, because Dredge already does the whole melee anti-loop thing, like where he puts something down and then gets the free hit way better than the Knight does in much less time. And he has map mobility, so he can actually pressure the map, and a passive that actually makes it really hard to loop. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, oh, well, Wesker's in there, right? Wesker is a very different killer from Dredge and Knight. He in a sense, he has everything. He has anti-chase, built-in slowdown, map mobility. He has everything. He is the killer's killer, right? Like he has all the tools, so to speak. But that is an IP. Most of the things that have come from Wesker come from his source material. Things that he is able to do in Resident Evil 5, which is the game that he's being modeled after. That he can do a lot of the things that he does in DBD in his source material. So whenever behavior goes in and tries to adapt a character, they try to adapt it the best they can to the source material, because obviously if they make the IP holder angry, they may decide to cut their deal, and they don't want that. So they want to be as respectful and as faithful to the IP by giving them a faithful representation inside the game and an accurate representation. So that kind of A, limits what they can do with the character, but B, more importantly for our conversation, kind of rigidly defines what the character is going to do in DBD. Of course, there are some minor discrepancies with this, like with Sadako, who is a very the most of her power is ambiguous and very definitely not slasher-y, very much not an atypical quote-unquote killer. They had to take some liberties, and I think they adapted that character pretty well. But for the most part, they don't really have a lot of freedom of what they can do with IPs, and to me, that means that, you know, for the purposes of our conversation and them coming up with original killer ideas, that means like with recent memory, like with like Wesker, that's kind of like, in a sense, like pretty straightforward. So let's take away all the IPs then. Let's take away all the IPs and look at just like the last 3 released original killers. So that would be Knight, Dredge, and Artist. And Artist started this whole like little like bubble of put my power to loop and win the chase for free killer killer archetype. This whole killer archetype of I put something at one end of the loop and I win for free, that was started by the artist at the end of last year. The artist was the first one of that archetype, and she has since been copied in melee form by Dredge and now the Knight. So this is the third time they have gone back to this well. The third time they have gone back to this specific archetype in a row to try and, you know, make another killer out of it. So they keep, you know, essentially beating the dead horse. They're like, hey, you want another killer that you put something down at the end of the loop and then you win for free? Hey, you want to see me do it again? Hey, you want to see me do it again? Because outside of IPs, that's kind of all they've done. That's kind of all they've put out. And that's like, so when you talk about this idea of like, oh, well, behavior's running out of killer ideas, like usually I'm like, nah, that's overreacting. But like, if you look, literally, like, I'm not here to say that, like, you know, they're never allowed to like redo killer ideas, right? Because obviously we have multiple ranged killers since Huntress has been a thing, but like those were like really spaced out, right? So like Huntress, Deathslinger, and Trickster, those are incredibly spaced out in terms of their release dates, right? Like they were not one after another, but like in our case, we have literally them going back to the same archetype 3 times in a row. Whenever it came to, hey, you need to make an original killer. Whenever it came to making an original character, they went back to this well 3 times in a row. And that does kind of raise an eyebrow. That does make things that does make me a little concerned for their creativity, because like they can't do this again, right? They can't go back to the well a 4th time and be like, oh, another put something at the loop character. If they do this a 4th time, people are definitely going to notice that you're kind of running out of ideas here, friend. So yeah, there's a little bit of credence. There's a little bit of truth. Possibly to that whole behavior running out of killer ideas thing, which is usually something I don't agree with. So it's weird. It's just something to think about, right? So yeah, do you think that behavior is running out of killer ideas, or do you think this is just kind of like them potentially being like lazy or unimaginative? Why are they making the same killer over and over? Let me know down in the comments below. But other than that, it's gonna be it for today's video, friend. Thank you so much for watching. But other than that, I will see you in tomorrow's video. But if I don't, I'll see you when I see you. Goodbye.